Sterile wealthy Sil married a fat black nurse to prove a point. Months later, she owned everything. Monica laughed, the sound echoing across the empty parking lot. A plane? Sir, I think you have the wrong number. Have you ever been humiliated so completely that it changed who you are? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. The billionaire who owned half of Silicon Valley was about to lose everything to a woman he married as a joke. Brandon Clay stood in his empty Malibu mansion, divorce papers trembling in his hands. The 65-inch screen on his wall showed CNN's breaking news. Tech mogul loses empire to contract wife. His phone buzzed with calls from reporters, investors, board members. Everyone wanted to know how the golden boy of technology had fallen so hard, so fast. But this story doesn't start with his downfall. It starts 6 months earlier at the Metropolitan Museum Charity Gala in Manhattan, where his world first cracked. Brandon had walked into that glittering ballroom feeling untouchable. At 34, he owned 3 tech companies, a venture capital firm, and enough real estate to house a small city. The cameras loved his sharp jaw and designer suits. Forbes called him Silicon Valley's most eligible bachelor. Then Vanessa Sterling opened her perfectly painted mouth and destroyed him. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced into the microphone, her voice carrying across the silent ballroom. "Let me tell you about Brandon Clay. He looks like a man who can conquer anything, doesn't he?" The crowd murmured agreement. Brandon smiled, expecting praise. But here's what you don't know. He's less of a man than he appears. Can't even give a woman children. Within minutes, #Sterile success was trending worldwide. Brandon's chest tightened, his vision blurred. The panic attack hit him like a truck in the museum bathroom 20 minutes later. That's when Monica Drew found him. She was working the event as a private nurse, hired to monitor elderly donors. When she discovered him gasping for air in the marble bathroom, she didn't see a billionaire having a breakdown. She saw a human being in pain. "Breathe with me," she said, her southern accent soft as honey. Her dark skin glowed under the harsh bathroom lights. She was curvy in ways that made his brain stop working, even through his panic. In for 4, hold for 7, out for 8. Her hands were steady on his shoulders. Her voice cut through his racing thoughts. For 10 minutes, this woman he'd never met became his anchor. Have you ever been humiliated so completely that it changed who you are? Has someone's cruelty ever made you want revenge so badly you destroy your own life to get it? Tell me in the comments below, because that's exactly what Brandon Clay was about to do. 6 months later, he scrolled through his phone, finding her number from that night. Monica Drew. She had no idea she was about to become the most talked about woman in America. He dialed. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Hello. Monica, this is Brandon Clay. We met at the museum gala. I have a business proposition for you." She thought he was calling to thank her for saving his life that night. Instead, he offered to buy her future. Monica Drew wiped sweat from her forehead as she finished her double shift at Augusta General Hospital. 12 hours of checking vitals, changing bedpans, and holding hands with scared patients. Her feet ached in her worn sneakers. Her scrubs stuck to her skin. The phone call came as she walked to her beat-up Honda Civic. "Mr. Clay," she remembered him clearly. Panic in his eyes, expensive suit wrinkled, hands shaking like leaves. "Are you okay? I need to see you. Tomorrow. I'll send a plane." Monica laughed, the sound echoing across the empty parking lot. "A plane? Sir, I think you have the wrong number." "I don't. Pack for California. We need to talk." 24 hours later, Monica sat in Brandon's glass office in Palo Alto, staring at a contract that made her stomach turn. The building stretched 40 floors into the sky. Through the windows, she could see the entire Silicon Valley spread out like a circuit board. Brandon looked different than he had that night. Controlled, cold. His blue eyes held no warmth, no recognition of their shared moment. $500,000, he said, sliding the papers across his marble desk. 1 year of marriage. No love, no real intimacy, just headlines. Monica's hands shook as she read. "You want to marry me?" "What?" "Because you're perfect for what I need." Unexpected, authentic, everything they'd never see coming. His voice was businesslike, discussing her like a stock purchase. I need to rebrand myself as a family man. Show the world that Brandon Clay isn't defined by what he can't do. This is crazy. Monica stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. I'm not some prop for your image. Everyone's a prop, Monica. The question is, do you want to be a well-paid one? She thought about her mother's medical bills, the second mortgage on their tiny house in Augusta, her brother's college tuition, the stack of rejection letters from nursing programs she couldn't afford. Why me? She whispered. Brandon's eyes traveled over her curves, her natural hair, her Target dress. Because when I marry a plus-sized black nurse from Georgia, nobody will question my masculinity again. They'll be too shocked to remember why they were laughing. The words hit her like slaps. She wasn't a person to him. She was a statement. Would you marry a stranger for $500,000? What price would make you compromise your values? Drop a comment and let me know where you draw the line. Monica picked up the pen. Her hand hovered over the signature line. $500,000 would solve every problem her family had ever faced. All she had to do was pretend to love a man who saw her as a publicity stunt. I have conditions, she said finally. Brandon leaned back, amused. Name them. I want access to your business files. If I'm going to be your wife, I need to understand your world. Done. He smiled like a shark. Anything else? She signed her name with steady hands, but as the ink dried, something in his expression shifted. For a split second, he looked almost guilty. Too late now. The world exploded the day Silicon Valley's prince married a plus-sized nurse from the South, exactly as he planned. The wedding photos broke the internet. Brandon Clay, billionaire tech mogul, kissing Monica Drew on the steps of San Francisco City Hall. Her white dress hugged her curves. His hand rested on her waist like he owned her. The cameras captured everything. His satisfied smile, her nervous eyes, the ring that cost more than most people's houses. Within an hour, Twitter crashed. Instagram stories multiplied like virus cells. The hashtags wrote themselves. Hashtag unexpected love, hashtag power couple, hashtag breaking barriers, hashtag gold digger. Monica sat in the back of their limousine, scrolling through the comments on her phone. Each one felt like a knife. Look at him settling for that whale. She hit the lottery and he hit rock bottom. Desperate much? Guess money really can't buy taste. Another white man trying to prove he's not racist by marrying down. Brandon sipped champagne beside her, watching the same feeds on his tablet. His smile grew wider with each cruel comment. Perfect, he murmured. Absolutely perfect. Monica's chest tightened. These people are destroying me. They're talking about us. That's the point. He didn't look up from his screen. In 6 months, they'll forget why they were upset. But they'll remember that Brandon Clay can surprise them. Her phone buzzed with a call from her mother in Augusta. Baby, what have you done? Mama's voice cracked with hurt. The whole church is calling me, asking if you lost your mind. Mama, I can explain. On the news, they're saying terrible things about you, about our family. Mrs. Johnson saw you on CNN and asked if you were doing this for money. Her mother started crying. Is that what this is, Monica? Did you sell yourself? Monica looked at Brandon, who was texting someone, completely unbothered by her pain. No, Mama, I married him because I love him. The lie tasted like poison. That night, in the mansion's guest wing, Monica unpacked her single suitcase. The room was bigger than her entire apartment back home. Marble bathroom, walk-in closet, a bed that could sleep 4 people. A welcome gift sat on a nightstand, a company tablet with Brandon's business logo, a note in his handwriting. Welcome to the family business. B, have you ever been judged for who you chose to love? When the whole world turned against your relationship, how did you survive the hate? Share your story in the comments below. Monica powered on the tablet. Her new husband had given her access to everything: financial reports, board meeting notes, legal documents, employee files. He'd meant it as a courtesy, a way to help her understand his world. He had no idea what she was capable of discovering. As she scrolled through the files, one folder caught her attention. Vanessa Sterling, legal issues. Inside were emails, financial records, and a private investigator's report dated just 2 weeks ago. Her husband wasn't just trying to repair his image. He was planning to destroy his ex-girlfriend completely. And he'd just given his new wife all the weapons she needed to destroy him instead. While he played the devoted husband for cameras, she was learning every secret his empire was built on. 3 weeks into their marriage, Monica had memorized Brandon's schedule better than his assistant. He left the mansion at 6 a.m. sharp, returned after midnight, and spoke to her only when cameras were watching. She lived like a ghost in his glass house. The staff treated her differently than they treated him. Where Brandon barked orders and expected instant obedience, Monica asked about their families, remembered their names, brought coffee to the security guards during night shifts. Mrs. Clay, Maria, the head housekeeper, said one morning as Monica sat in the kitchen reading business reports, "You don't have to eat breakfast alone. Mr. Clay usually takes meetings during meals anyway." Monica looked up from the tablet. "Has he always been this distant?" Maria's face carefully blank. "Mr. Clay is a very focused man," but her eyes said more. They said he'd always been cold. They said Monica wasn't the first woman to sit in this kitchen, wondering why she wasn't enough. Monica spent her days studying Brandon's business like a medical textbook. She learned that his tech empire rested on 3 companies: Cloud Vault Data Storage, Wellness Wave, Health Apps, and Innovate Labs, AI Research. Each company fed the others. Each had vulnerabilities that could topple the whole structure. She also learned that his employees were getting restless. The emails told the story. Delayed payments to vendors. Complaints about Brandon's leadership style. Board members questioning his decisions. His focus on public image was costing him internal loyalty. Meanwhile, their public appearances grew more frequent. Gallery openings, charity dinners, tech conferences where she stood beside him in designer dresses, smiling while he gave speeches about innovation and family values. "My wife reminds me every day that success means nothing without someone to share it with," he'd say, pulling her close for the cameras. The audiences ate it up. The media praised their authentic connection. Forbes ran a cover story, "How Love Changed Silicon Valley's Most Ruthless CEO." But in private, he barely looked at her. One evening, Monica was reviewing Wellness Wave's quarterly reports when she noticed something strange. The mental health app division was losing money, but Brandon kept pouring resources into it. Why? She dug deeper. The app targeted anxiety and panic disorders. It had been his personal project for 2 years, ever since his first public panic attack. He was trying to fix himself through technology. Her phone buzzed with a text. "Emergency board meeting tomorrow. Need you there. Wear the blue dress." B. What would you do if you discovered your spouse was hiding their true self? Would you confront them or use the information to protect yourself? Tell me your thoughts below. The next morning, Monica sat in Brandon's conference room, surrounded by men in expensive suits who looked at her like decoration. The meeting was about Vanessa Sterling's lawsuit. She was demanding $50 million for emotional distress and defamation of character. She's claiming you used her private medical information to humiliate her, the lead lawyer explained to Brandon. The museum incident could be considered revenge. Brandon's jaw tightened. "She humiliated me first." "That's not how courts work, Mr. Clay." Monica cleared her throat. "What if we countersued?" The room went silent. Brandon stared at her like she'd grown a second head. "Excuse me," he said. "Countersue for defamation. If she damaged your reputation and cost you business, you have grounds." Monica pulled up files on her tablet. "I've been studying your revenue reports. Stock prices dropped 30% after the gala. That's quantifiable damage." The lawyers exchanged glances. One of them nodded slowly. "That's actually not a bad strategy." Brandon's eyes met hers across the table. For the first time since their wedding, he looked at her like she was more than a prop. "Draw up the papers," he told his lawyers. Then to Monica, "Good thinking." As they left the meeting, he touched her elbow, the first genuine physical contact in weeks. "Thank you," he said quietly. Monica felt something dangerous stir in her chest, something that felt like hope. She pushed it down. Hope was a luxury she couldn't afford, not when she was planning to take everything he owned. His ex-girlfriend's lawsuit was about to destroy everything, until the wife he ignored proved she was paying attention. The counter-lawsuit strategy worked better than anyone expected. Within 2 weeks, Vanessa Sterling's legal team was scrambling to respond. Her defamation claims suddenly looked weak compared to the documented financial damage she'd caused Brandon. Stock analysts began revising their reports. The media narrative shifted from wounded ex-girlfriend seeks justice to scorned woman's revenge backfires. Monica found herself spending more time in Brandon's office, not as decoration, but as a consultant. She had a talent for spotting patterns in financial data that his high-priced analysts missed. "Look at this," she said one evening, spreading reports across his desk. "Your Wellness Wave app is hemorrhaging money, but not because it's a bad product. Your marketing team is targeting the wrong demographic." Brandon leaned closer, his shoulder brushing hers. The contact sent electricity through her skin, the first time she felt attracted to him since their wedding night photos. "Explain." "They're advertising to young professionals who want productivity tools. But your app is designed for people with genuine mental health struggles. Market it to healthcare providers, therapy clinics, support groups. People who actually need what you built." His eyes studied the charts she'd annotated. "That's brilliant. It's obvious. You just needed someone who understands both sides, business and healthcare." For a moment, the space between them felt charged with possibility. Then his phone rang, shattering the moment. "Clay." His voice went cold and professional. "What do you mean the board is meeting without me?" Monica watched his face change as he listened. His jaw clenched. His free hand gripped the desk until his knuckles went white. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, he said, hanging up. "What's wrong?" 3 board members called an emergency meeting. "They're discussing my leadership concerns." He grabbed his jacket, then paused. "Come with me." "To a board meeting?" "I'm not. You're my wife. And apparently, you understand my business better than some people I've been paying for years. When was the last time someone you underestimated surprised you with their intelligence? Have you ever had to prove yourself to people who saw you as an outsider? Share that moment below." The boardroom felt like a courtroom. 6 men in dark suits sat around a polished table, their faces grim. They looked up when Brandon entered with Monica, their expressions shifting from professional concern to barely concealed irritation. "Gentlemen," Brandon said, taking his seat at the head of the table, "I understand you have concerns about my performance." Richard Hawthorne, the eldest board member, spoke first. "Brandon, your focus on personal matters has been distracting. The Vanessa Sterling situation, this sudden marriage, the media attention, it's affecting company morale and investor confidence. My personal life is exactly that. Personal, not when it impacts stock prices," another member added. "We've lost 12% value in 6 months." Monica felt Brandon tense beside her. This was bigger than a lawsuit. This was a coup. She cleared her throat. "Gentlemen, have you reviewed the Q3 projections?" They stared at her like she'd spoken in a foreign language. "I'm sorry," Hawthorne said coldly, "but this is a board meeting, not a wives' club." The dismissal in his voice lit a fire in Monica's chest. These men saw her the same way Brandon initially had, as decoration, not substance. "You're right," she said, standing slowly. "I'm not a board member. I'm just someone who spent the last month studying your company's financials while you were apparently too busy plotting to notice that Wellness Wave's pivot strategy is about to turn your biggest loss into your biggest profit center." She pulled out her tablet, connecting it to the room's display screen. Charts and graphs filled the wall behind her. "The mental health app market is exploding. Brandon's anxiety management platform isn't failing, it's ahead of its time. But instead of supporting innovation, you're worried about tabloid headlines." The room went silent as her data filled the screen. Revenue projections, market analysis, competitor weakness assessments. "This is impressive work," one of the younger board members admitted. "It should be. I've been doing it for free while you've been paying consultants thousands of dollars for reports half as thorough." Brandon stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. "Motion to table the leadership discussion pending review of Mrs. Clay's analysis," Hawthorne said quietly. As they filed out, Brandon caught Monica's elbow. "Where did that come from?" he asked. Monica looked into his eyes, really looked, and saw something she hadn't expected. Respect. Maybe even the beginning of something deeper. I told you I wanted to understand your world, she said. You just never asked what I planned to do with that understanding. The moment stretched between them, loaded with possibilities neither had planned for. Then Monica remembered the recordings she'd found on his tablet. The conversations about using her as a prop. The casual cruelty in his voice when he discussed their arrangement. Some cracks could be repaired. Others just made the whole structure more dangerous. I need to get home, she said, pulling away. Early day tomorrow. As she walked toward the elevator, Monica felt his eyes on her back. He was starting to see her as more than a contract. Too bad she'd already decided to destroy him. She'd built a life from scratch in Memphis. A life he now threatened to upend with wealth, privilege, and a legal claim to their daughter. The modest two-bedroom bungalow in South Memphis stood worlds apart from Grant's lakeside mansion. Tidy flower beds lined a narrow walkway. Wind chimes made from bottle caps and fishing line tinkled from the porch ceiling. A tricycle lay on its side, next to a chalk-covered sidewalk. It's not much, Aubrielle said as she unlocked the door, watching Grant's expression. It's a home, he replied simply. Lily bounded inside, excitement overcoming her initial shyness around the tall stranger who'd spent the last 2 days orbiting their lives. Come see my room, she commanded, grabbing Grant's hand with the natural authority of a 3-year-old. Her 2-bedroom bungalow in South Memphis could fit in his mansion's guest wing, but watching Lily proudly show him her bedroom. Walls covered with artwork, bookshelves overflowing with library books. He recognized a richness his money couldn't buy. She reads already? Grant asked, noticing the books organized by color. Not yet, but she memorizes everything. Just like Aubrielle stopped. Like Elizabeth, he finished. She had a photographic memory too. The neighborhood came alive as evening approached. Neighbors waved from porches. Children played basketball using a milk crate nailed to a telephone pole. 2 elderly men argued cheerfully over chess pieces at a card table. You know everyone, Grant observed as Aubrielle exchanged greetings. That's how it works here. We look out for each other. She glanced at him. Different from your world. In her small kitchen, they moved around each other preparing dinner. His suit jacket hung over a chair, sleeves rolled up as he chopped vegetables. The domestic scene felt strangely right, creating a warmth neither acknowledged. What happens now? She asked, stirring pasta. With Lily, the question hung between them, heavy with implications. I'm not taking her from you, he said finally, but I won't be kept from her either. Your life is in Indianapolis. Board meetings, acquisitions, private jets. Her eyes met his. Our life is here. Community center story times, public schools, church on Sundays. Then something has to change, he said. For both of us. Lily interrupted, tugging Grant's pant leg. Will you read me a story? Mommy always reads 3 before bed. He was midway through reading Lily's bedtime story when Aubrielle's phone rang. Grant's mother requesting a private meeting, woman to woman, no lawyers. Tell her yes, he said, closing the book. But she's not meeting you alone. It's time I heard whatever she has to say. To both of us. When 2 different worlds collide, what survives the impact? Have you ever had to bridge vast differences with someone important to you? Share your experience below. Victoria Whitaker had built an empire alongside her late husband. She wasn't about to let a nurse from Arkansas threaten the dynasty with claims to the bloodline, no matter what the DNA said. The downtown Memphis offices of Whitaker Holdings occupied the top 3 floors of a glass tower, the company logo visible for blocks. Security guards with earpieces nodded respectfully as Grant led Aubrielle through marble-floored lobbies and up private elevators. Victoria waited in the corner conference room, silver hair swept into an immaculate chignon, diamonds glinting at her ears and throat despite the early hour. Her sharp blue eyes narrowed at the sight of them entering together. I asked to meet with Ms. Jones alone, she said, not rising from her chair. That arrangement has expired, Grant replied, pulling out a chair for Aubrielle before taking his own. The Whitaker Holdings Memphis office gleamed with old money and power. Mahogany panels, oil paintings of stern ancestors, And Victoria herself, silver-haired perfection in Chanel, eyes cold as she measured Aubrielle like an inconvenient business problem requiring swift elimination. "Where's the child?" Victoria asked, ignoring the tension. "Her name is Lily," Aubrielle said quietly. "And she's with my sister." Victoria's mouth tightened. "I see motherhood hasn't improved your judgment. Bringing my son into this situation was never part of our agreement." "Your agreement," Grant interrupted. "Not hers. Not mine. Don't be naive, Grant. This woman nursed you when you were vulnerable, took advantage. I saw the DNA test," he cut her off, "and I know about Elizabeth's suicide note." Victoria's composure slipped for just a second. She recovered with practiced ease, turning to Aubrielle. "You've certainly been thorough with your manipulations." "No manipulación, obligativamente. Just truth." Finally, Victoria opened a leather portfolio, sliding forward document. "Perhaps this will clarify matters. A settlement agreement. $5 million. Full college fund for the child. In exchange for restricted access and complete confidentiality." Grant's hand came down hard on the table. "Enough. Don't be emotional," Victoria chided. "This protects everyone, including your daughter. The Whitaker name carries expectations, responsibilities, burdens," Grant finished, "like the ones that drove Elizabeth to end her life." Victoria's eyes flashed. "Your wife was unstable. She didn't understand what marrying into this family meant." "And what exactly does that mean, Mother?" Grant leaned forward. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like manipulation, secrets, and buying people's silence." Grant's protective hand moved to Aubrielle's lower back as Victoria's gaze turned calculating. The simple touch sent warmth through Aubrielle, a silent promise of alliance against the cold woman across the table. "You've known this woman for what? 3 days since she reappeared? I've protected this family for 40 years. Victoria gathered her papers with manicured fingers. "You think this is about money? Ask your nurse what really happened the night of your accident. Ask her what she was doing on that highway before your cars collided. Nothing happens by chance in our world, Grant. Especially not her. What price would you put on your child's heritage? Is legacy about bloodlines and wealth, or about love and values?" Comment your thoughts below. The highway accident that killed his wife and brought them together wasn't random, but neither was Aubrielle's presence on that road that night. They retreated to the Peabody, rain battering the windows as night fell over Memphis. Lily had been temporarily relocated to Aubrielle's sister's home in Oxford, Mississippi, a precaution that felt increasingly necessary as Victoria's threats lingered in the air. "What did she mean?" Grant asked, pacing the suite. "About you being on that highway?" Aubrielle sat rigid on the edge of the couch, hands clasped in her lap. "I need to show you something first." She pulled out her phone, opening a secure folder. "I've kept these for 3 years, not knowing if I'd ever need them." The first photo showed an elderly man in a hospital bed. "Frederick Langdon," she explained. "Your father-in-law. I was his private nurse during his final months." Grant stopped pacing. "Elizabeth's father? You worked for him 3 months before your accident. He was dying of pancreatic cancer." More photos followed, medical charts, handwritten notes, and finally, documents with Whitaker Holdings letterhead. Frederick discovered financial irregularities in joint ventures between his company and Whitaker Holdings. Fraud, tax evasion, bribes to foreign officials. She looked up at Grant. "He believed your father was involved, and after his death, your mother continued it. That's why Elizabeth was on that road," Grant realized. "She was taking these documents somewhere." Aubrielle nodded slowly. "Frederick asked me to help Elizabeth expose what they'd found. That night, she called me in a panic. Said someone had been following her for days. She was driving to meet a journalist. And you were following her too, to make sure she arrived safely." Aubrielle's voice cracked. "I was 2 cars behind when the truck jackknifed it. The ice, the pileup. I saw her car hit the guardrail, but there was no way she could have avoided it. Rain lashed the hotel windows as she reconstructed that night. The icy roads, following headlights, the sudden jackknife of trucks, metal tearing, glass shattering. Her hands trembling as she relived rushing to his mangled car, not knowing then how completely their lives would intertwine. "You pulled me out," Grant said softly. "Before the fire, I was trying to reach Elizabeth first. But her car, she couldn't finish. And then you became my nurse. Was that part of some plan too?" "No." She met his eyes directly. "That was coincidence. I didn't even know you were in the car with her until I saw you in the ER. Everyone thought she was driving alone." The pieces aligned with sickening clarity. Elizabeth's secretive behavior before the crash, his mother's desperate damage control afterward, the missing documents never mentioned in any accident report. "Why didn't you tell me this in the hospital?" he asked, voice raw. "You were grieving, broken." And then, her eyes dropped to her stomach in a gesture that needed no explanation. "When I discovered I was pregnant, your mother found me. Somehow she knew about my connection to Frederick." Grant crossed the room, kneeling before her. "Aubrielle," his hands covered hers. "I need to know everything now. No more secrets between us." The confession cracked something open between them. 4 years of separation, of half-truths and missing pieces suddenly gave way to desperate connection. His lips found hers, gentle at first, then hungry with need to reclaim what had been taken from them. Clothes fell away as they moved to the bedroom, the storm outside matching their intensity. His hands remembered her body even as he discovered new curves from motherhood. Her fingers traced scars from the accident, physical reminders of all that had been lost and found. "I never stopped thinking about you," he confessed against her neck. "I saw your face every day in Lily's eyes," she whispered back. They came together with years of longing, passion mingled with grief for lost time. Every touch an apology, every kiss a promise, their bodies speaking truths their words had failed to express. Afterward, as they lay entangled in hotel sheets, her phone buzzed with an anonymous text. "Bank surveillance footage sent to Memphis Commercial Appeal. Story breaks tomorrow. Get the child out now." Attached was a photo of Lily at her preschool, taken that very afternoon. Have you ever discovered that a pivotal moment in your life wasn't what it seemed? How do you move forward when the past shifts beneath your feet? Share your thoughts. By sunrise, their private reunion had become national news. Billionaire's secret child with black nurse sparks custody battle. But the headlines missed the real story unfolding behind closed doors. Grant's phone began ringing at 5:17 a.m. First his assistant, then his PR team, followed by board members and legal counsel. By 6, Aubrielle's phone joined the chorus as reporters somehow obtained her number. They watched in stunned silence as their photos flashed across morning news. Grainy footage from the bank security cameras showed their confrontation, Lily's face mercifully blurred but still recognizable to anyone who knew her. "Who leaked this?" Aubrielle whispered, clutching her robe around her. Grant's jaw tightened. Only one person stood to gain. News vans lined both their street and his hotel. Satellite dishes pointed skyward like modern pitchforks, hungry for the perfect scandal. Race, class, wealth, and sex, all the elements that still divided America, now focused on their daughter's innocent face, blurred but recognizable on every screen. Whitaker Holdings stock dropped 12 points at opening bell, Grant's CFO reported by phone. Boards calling for an emergency meeting. Social media exploded with hashtags. Hashtag Whitaker Love Child, hashtag Billionaire's Baby Mama, hashtag Nurse Turns Gold Digger. Commenters debated whether Aubrielle had trapped him, whether Grant had paid her off, whether Victoria was protecting family interests. Racial undertones permeated every discussion. Talk shows debated the optics of a white billionaire with a black nurse. Conservative commentators questioned Lily's claim to the Whitaker fortune. Liberal pundits analyzed power dynamics of their hospital relationship. "We need to get to Lily," Aubrielle said, throwing clothes into a bag. "If they found her preschool." "My security team's already at your sister's," Grant assured her. "No one's getting near her." They attempted to leave the hotel through service exits, only to find photographers waiting. In the underground garage, Grant pulled Aubrielle into the back seat of his SUV, privacy windows shielding them from prying lenses. "I'm so sorry," he said, holding her hand tightly. "This is exactly what my mother threatened you with." She calculated everything, Aubrielle replied, even our reaction to the leak. In the confined space of the vehicle, away from cameras and phones, Grant pulled her close. The kiss was different from last night's passion. This was comfort, solidarity, a promise of protection. "We'll get through this," he whispered against her hair. Together, she agreed, allowing herself to believe it might be possible. When his corporate lawyer arrived with emergency custody papers, not filed by Grant, but by Victoria, the final line made Aubrielle collapse. Petitioner seeks full custody on grounds of respondent's involvement in death of petitioner's daughter-in-law. His mother wasn't just fighting for control. She was trying to send Aubrielle to prison. How would you protect your child from becoming a media spectacle? What would you sacrifice for privacy in an age where secrets become headlines? Let me know in the comments. They fled to his secluded lake house where no cameras could find them. But isolation stripped away their last defenses, revealing truths neither was prepared to face. The property sat on 50 wooded acres, 3 hours from Memphis, accessible only by private road. No neighbors, no cell service without a booster, no chance encounters with paparazzi. The modern glass and stone structure overlooked a private lake, mountains rising in the distance. Lily explored her new environment with delight, chasing fireflies at dusk and discovering deer tracks along the shoreline. Her resilience amazed both adults, who carried the weight of headlines and legal threats on their shoulders. "Your lawyer says Victoria can't possibly win custody," Aubrielle said on their second night, after Lily had fallen asleep. "But she could drag this out for years. She's trying to force a settlement." Grant stood at the wall of windows, watching darkness settle over the water. "Control the narrative, minimize damage to the company, keep me in line. And what do you want?" Aubrielle asked quietly. The question hung between them. In 3 days, their lives had combusted, forced together by circumstance and secrets. Last night, they'd slept in separate rooms, the intimacy of the hotel replaced by careful distance. Grant turned from the window. "I want to know my daughter. I want to dismantle whatever corruption my parents built into Whitaker Holdings. And I want," he stopped, studying her face in the firelight. "I want to know if what's between us is real or just reaction to crisis." Pine trees surrounded the glass-walled sanctuary overlooking still waters. No neighbors for miles. The outside world reduced to distant buzzing phones they'd silenced, focusing instead on Lily's delighted discovery of deer tracks along the shoreline. 4 years ago, I fell for a man I nursed back to health," Aubrielle said carefully. "It was complicated, unprofessional, and the most real thing I'd ever felt. And now," he asked, moving closer, "now I'm a mother first. Everything else comes second, including me, especially you." Her honesty cut through pretense. "You're offering protection, resources, security. I'd be lying if I said that isn't attractive when my daughter's being threatened. But I won't confuse gratitude with feelings." Grant nodded slowly. "Fair enough." But that night, as moonlight silvered the lake, Aubrielle found herself drawn to the deck where Grant sat alone. Without words, she took the chair beside him, their silence comfortable under stars brighter than any city sky. "I hated you sometimes," she admitted finally, "for making me feel something I had to leave behind." "I looked for you," he replied. "Hired investigators. Followed every lead. Why? Because nothing made sense without you." The simple truth broke something open between them. This time when they came together, it wasn't desperation or crisis that drove them, but recognition. His hands traced her body with reverence. Her lips mapped the geography of his scars with tender precision. They made love under the stars, the wooden deck cool against her back, his body warm above her. No hotel sheets, no luxury surroundings, just honest need and the strange peace of finally being exactly where they belonged. Afterward, he carried her to his bedroom, neither willing to separate just yet. They talked until dawn, about Lily's first steps, his company's future, the life they might build from these broken pieces. As Lily slept between them on the oversized couch the next afternoon, exhausted from swimming, Grant's trusted security chief called with news. Your mother's been arrested by the FBI. The documents your wife stole the night she died just resurfaced, and they're asking for you both to come in immediately. When forced to choose between your past and your future, how do you decide? Have you ever had to reinvent your entire identity? Share your experience below. The Whitaker fortune wasn't built on innovation alone. Beneath the glossy annual reports lay years of fraud, bribery, and deaths dismissed as accidents, including one that had almost claimed him. The Memphis Federal Building stood gray and imposing in the morning light. Grant and Aubrielle followed a stone-faced agent through security checkpoints and into a conference room where 6 people waited: 3 FBI agents, 2 Justice Department prosecutors, and a forensic accountant with stacks of files before him. "Mr. Whitaker, Ms. Jones," the lead agent began, "thank you for coming. I'm Special Agent Carver. We have some questions about Whitaker Holdings and its international operations." For the next 3 hours, they unraveled a web of corruption spanning 2 decades. Charts displaying shell companies, offshore accounts, falsified environmental reports, bribes to foreign officials for mineral rights in developing countries. "Your father established the system," the forensic accountant explained, sliding documents toward Grant. "After his death, your mother continued it. We believe these operations represent approximately 30% of Whitaker Holdings' annual revenue." Grant examined the papers, recognizing his father's signature on documents he'd never seen despite being CEO for 5 years. "Most of this was compartmentalized," Agent Carver explained. "Need-to-know basis only. Your name doesn't appear on any fraudulent documentation." "That doesn't matter," Grant said. "It's my company." Aubrielle watched his face, seeing the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. Not just for Lily now, but for thousands of employees, shareholders, and communities affected by his family choices. Federal buildings always smelled the same. Institutional cleanliness masking institutional power. But sitting beside Aubrielle, watching her soft voice command the room as she detailed following his wife that night, he realized power took many forms beyond wealth and influence. "Ms. Jones," the female prosecutor addressed Aubrielle, "your testimony about the night of the accident confirms what we suspected. Elizabeth Whitaker was transporting evidence to journalist Clayton Wells, who mysteriously died of heart failure 2 days later." Aubrielle's hand found Grant's under the table, their fingers intertwining as the scope of the conspiracy expanded around them. "And my accident?" Grant asked. "Was that planned too?" Agent Carver nodded grimly. "We believe your wife was the target. You weren't supposed to be in the car that night. The driver of the truck that jackknifed it has connections to security contractors previously employed by Whitaker Holdings." The room tilted sideways as Grant absorbed the implication. His mother had orchestrated his wife's death. He was collateral damage. "Victoria Whitaker is currently in custody," the prosecutor continued. "The charges include conspiracy to commit fraud, tax evasion, obstruction of justice, and—" She paused, meeting Grant's eyes, "conspiracy to commit murder." "We'll need both your testimonies," Agent Carver added. "Especially yours, Ms. Jones. As the only witness to the accident who understood its context, you're crucial to our case." The lead agent's final question stunned them both. "We have reason to believe Victoria Whitaker ordered the highway accident that killed your wife, not knowing you would be driving that night instead of her. Ms. Jones, did you witness anything before the crash that would confirm this?" Their eyes met, knowing her answer would change everything. Would you sacrifice family loyalty for justice? What would you do if discovering your family's success was built on corruption? Tell me your thoughts in the comments. She could bring down the Whitaker empire with one testimony, but the cost might be the future she'd begun to imagine with a man watching her from across the room. The prosecutors gave them 24 hours to decide. They returned to the lake house in heavy silence, checking on Lily before retreating to the deck where life-altering conversations seemed to happen between them. "If you testify," Grant said finally, "the media will tear into your past. Every relationship, every job, every decision." "I know." Aubrielle wrapped her arms around herself against the evening chill. They'll question why I became your nurse, why I kept the documents, why I disappeared with your child. My mother's attorneys will paint you as an opportunist, someone who planned this from the beginning. Is that what you think? She asked quietly. Grant crossed the space between them, taking her hands. I think you're the bravest person I've ever known. I think you've been protecting everyone. Frederick, Elizabeth, Lily, even me, while no one protected you. Tears filled her eyes. I'm tired of running, of hiding, of lies. Then we stop. Whatever comes next, we face it together. By morning, their decision was made. Aubrielle would testify about everything. The accident, Victoria's threats, the payments, Frederick's evidence. Grant would step down as CEO temporarily and cooperate fully with investigators. Their legal team worked through the night, preparing statements and court filings. When Victoria's attorneys delivered a proposed plea deal, one that would keep most details private in exchange for her resignation and a fine, Grant rejected it without hesitation. No more covering up, he told his lawyers. Whatever this costs us, the truth matters more. The courthouse steps gleamed white in morning sun. Reporters clustered like hungry crows. Microphones extended toward them as they walked hand in hand. Lily safely away with Aubrielle's sister, their faces composed despite the war awaiting inside those marble walls. Inside the federal courthouse, they separated, Grant to meet with prosecutors, Aubrielle to prepare for her deposition. In the quiet moment before she entered the conference room, he pulled her into an empty corridor. Whatever happens in there, he said, cupping her face, know that you've given me more than I deserved. A daughter, a second chance, a reason to be better than my name. The intensity between them built with each word, awareness of what was at stake charging the air. His lips found hers in a kiss that felt like both promise and possibility. I'll be right outside, he whispered against her mouth. Inside the deposition room, Victoria's high-powered defense team waited like predators. 8 attorneys with expensive suits and practiced intimidation tactics. But as Aubrielle took her seat, she felt a strange calm settle over her. No more running, no more fear. She answered every question with clear-eyed honesty. About Frederick's suspicions, about following Elizabeth that night, about Victoria's threats and payments, about Lily. 3 hours later, she emerged to find Grant pacing the hallway, tension visible in every line of his body. Before she could speak, a commotion at the end of the corridor drew their attention. As Victoria was led into court in handcuffs, her eyes locked on Grant with unexpected warmth. You look just like him, she whispered. Just like your father looked before they killed him. The guard pulled her away before Grant could process her words. Words that shattered everything he thought he knew about his father's death 30 years ago. Have you ever had to testify against someone powerful to protect others? What gave you the courage to speak truth when the consequences seemed overwhelming? Share your story below. The courtroom became their battlefield. Whitaker against Whitaker, mother against son, wealth against truth, while Aubrielle stood at the center, the nurse who had saved not just a man's body, but perhaps his soul. The trial of Victoria Whitaker dominated national headlines for 6 weeks. Corporate fraud charges expanded to include conspiracy to commit murder as evidence mounted about Elizabeth's accident. Each day brought new revelations about the Whitaker empire's darker foundations. Grant attended every session, sitting directly behind the prosecution table. His presence, the billionaire CEO publicly supporting the case against his own mother, transformed what could have been dismissed as financial crimes into a family drama that captivated America. Aubrielle's testimony lasted 3 days. She spoke with quiet dignity despite defense attorneys' attempts to portray her as calculating and manipulative. When questioned about her relationship with Grant, she neither embellished nor apologized. I was his nurse. We connected during his recovery. When I discovered I was pregnant, I made the decision I thought best protected everyone involved, including yourself financially, Victoria's attorney suggested. I never asked for money, Aubrielle replied evenly. It was offered with conditions I felt I couldn't refuse. Justice looked different up close, not blind but sharp-eyed. watching through security cameras as 3 generations of secrets spilled across polished oak barriers, tears falling on expensive suits, truth cutting through decades of careful fabrication. On the trial's 4th week, Victoria herself took the stand. The courtroom fell silent as the elegant matriarch raised her hand and swore to tell the truth, a concept that seemed foreign to her existence. "Everything I did," she testified, "was to protect what my husband built, what generations of Whitakers worked for, including arranging the death of your daughter-in-law," the prosecutor asked. Victoria's composure cracked slightly. "Elizabeth was going to destroy us with incomplete information and youthful righteousness. I never intended for Grant to be in that car." A collective gasp filled the courtroom. Grant's hands gripped the bench until his knuckles whitened. Aubrielle reached across the barrier to touch his arm, grounding him. "And what about your husband's death 30 years ago?" The prosecutor continued. "Was that also to protect the company?" Victoria's eyes darted to Grant. "My husband discovered his partners were dealing with criminal organizations. When he threatened to expose them, they made it look like a heart attack. I didn't arrange it, I survived it. Then I played their game to keep my son alive." The revelation stunned the courtroom. Grant's father, long revered as the visionary founder of Whitaker Holdings, had died trying to clean up the company. Victoria, rather than continuing his corruption, had been navigating a dangerous path between criminal partners and family protection. During a recess, Grant found Aubrielle in the courthouse corridor. Without words, he pulled her into an empty conference room, need and emotion overwhelming propriety. Their kiss was desperate, hands grasping at clothes, bodies seeking connection amidst chaos. "I can't process any of this," he whispered against her neck. "You don't have to understand it all right now," she answered, holding him close. "Just know you're not defined by their choices." When they returned to the courtroom, Grant approached the barrier. Before the proceedings resumed, he stood and addressed the court. "Your Honor, I'd like to make a statement." The judge, surprised, nodded permission. "I came here seeking justice for my wife's death and the corruption in my family's company. What I found is a more complicated truth." His eyes met Aubrielle's. "But I've also found that truth, however painful, offers the only path forward. Whatever happens with this case, Whitaker Holdings will make restitution to every community, employee, and investor affected by these actions." As cameras flashed and reporters scribbled, he continued, his voice strengthening. "And I want to publicly acknowledge Aubrielle Jones, not just for saving my life after the accident, but for her courage in coming forward despite every threat and pressure. She represents the integrity my company will strive for moving forward." The verdict brought Victoria's empire crashing down, but her final words to Grant before being led away echoed through his mind as they drove home. "I kept you safe the only way I knew how. That child of yours has the same blood that got your father killed. Keep her away from this world if you love her." For the first time, he wondered if his mother's actions, however twisted, had begun with love. When was the last time you stood up for truth, knowing it would cost you? What did you learn about yourself in that moment? I want to hear your experience in the comments. With the Whitaker name tarnished and fortune diminished, he discovered something unexpected: freedom to build a life that wealth had never permitted him to imagine. 6 months after Victoria's sentencing, 15 years with possibility of parole, the dust began to settle. Whitaker Holdings underwent complete restructuring. Grant stepped down as CEO, appointing a respected ethics professor to lead a transformed board of directors focused on corporate responsibility. The financial fallout was substantial. Stock prices plummeted. Assets were liquidated to pay fines and settlements. Grant's personal fortune, while still considerable, shrunk by nearly 60%. None of that seemed to matter as he stood on the porch of their new home, watching Aubrielle and Lily plant wildflowers along the walkway. The house sat on 10 acres just outside Atlanta, close enough to the reformed company headquarters for occasional consulting, near enough to Aubrielle's family for weekend visits, far from the shadows of Indianapolis and Memphis. The new house wasn't a mansion or a bungalow, but something in between: large windows overlooking Georgia pines, enough rooms for visiting family. A wraparound porch where Lily practiced ballet turns while they sip coffee, building plans for a life never marked on either of their maps. The foundation paperwork came through, Aubrielle said, joining him on the porch steps. We're officially approved. The Elizabeth Langdon Foundation, named for his late wife, would focus on medical access for underserved communities. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. The woman who had indirectly brought them together, now providing purpose for their shared future. Are you sure about this? She asked, studying his face. Using most of what's left to fund healthcare for people who can't afford it. I've never been more certain of anything. He took her hand, thumb brushing over the simple engagement ring she'd finally accepted last month. Except asking you to marry me. Their journey to this point hadn't been smooth. Months of therapy, both individual and couples. Careful introductions of Grant into Lily's life as daddy, not just mommy's friend. Learning to blend their vastly different approaches to life, money, and parenting. What emerged surprised them both. Grant discovered joy in simplicity, community cookouts, public parks, library story hours. Aubrielle found her voice as the foundation's director, advocating for policies she once thought beyond her influence. That evening, after Lily fell asleep in her butterfly-themed bedroom, they christened the master suite with a passionate intensity that had never diminished between them. Bodies entwined on sheets, still smelling of fabric softener. They moved together with the familiarity of lovers who had survived storms that would have destroyed others. I never thought we'd get here, Aubrielle whispered afterward, head resting on his chest. Where exactly is here? He asked, fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. A place where your mother's in prison, your company's being dismantled, your reputation's questioned in every business journal, and you're happier than I've ever seen you. Grant laughed softly. Turns out what I needed to lose wasn't you and Lily. It was everything else. Have you ever had to completely rebuild your life? What did you keep and what did you leave behind? Share your journey of transformation below. 4 years after freezing in that Memphis bank, they returned together, this time to open an account for their newborn son, completing a family circle that began with healing hands on broken bones. Memphis Trust Credit Union had changed little. Same marble floors, same hush financial discussions. But everything else had transformed as they entered together, no longer frozen in shock, but moving with the confidence of a family who had faced their worst fears and chosen love despite every reason not to. Lily, now 7, held her father's hand, chattering about starting 2nd grade next week. Grant listened attentively, the Wall Street Journal tucked under his arm, more habit than necessity these days. The businessman hadn't disappeared entirely, just evolved into something more balanced, more present. Aubrielle carried their 6-month-old son, Frederick, named for Elizabeth's father whose courage had ultimately exposed the truth. The baby's eyes, unlike his sister's, were deep brown like his mother's, a fact that delighted Victoria during her carefully supervised prison visits with her grandchildren. Mr. and Mrs. Whitaker, the bank manager, greeted them, no trace of the tension that had filled this space 4 years earlier. Everything's prepared for the children's accounts. As they completed paperwork establishing trust funds, modest by former Whitaker standards but secure, Aubrielle caught Grant watching her with that look that still made her heart race. "What?" she asked quietly. "Just thinking about how close we came to never having this." His gaze took in their children, their joined hands, the simple gold bands they'd exchanged in a small ceremony with only family present. The journey hadn't been easy. Victoria's crimes had tainted the Whitaker name, forcing Grant to rebuild his professional reputation from scratch. The foundation work often took Aubrielle into communities where poverty and need overwhelmed their resources. Blending their different backgrounds created regular challenges in parenting, finances, and family traditions. Yet somehow, the very forces that should have driven them apart, scandal, race, class, family interference, had forged something unbreakable between them. Last night, in the privacy of their bedroom, they'd celebrated their 2nd wedding anniversary with the same passion that had sparked in a hospital room years ago. His hands still discovered new ways to make her gasp. Her body still responded to his touch with an intensity that surprised them both. But now their physical connection carried the weight of shared history, of battles fought together, of a family built from the wreckage of secrets. "Mom, can I get hot chocolate when we're done?" Lily asked, breaking into their moment. "Me first need to sign my name," she insisted, carefully printing Lily Elizabeth Whitaker on the card the manager provided. As they left the bank, stepping into Memphis sunshine, a passing woman recognized them from the headlines years earlier. Instead of scandal-hungry curiosity, her smile held something like respect. "Your foundation helped my sister get cancer treatment last year," she said simply. "Thank you." Walking to their car, not a chauffeur-driven luxury vehicle, but a practical SUV, Grant's arm slipped around Aubrielle's waist. "You know what I think about sometimes?" he asked as they secured the children in their seats. "What's that? How many things had to go wrong for everything to turn out right?" His eyes held hers over the car roof. "The accident, your disappearance, even my mother's crimes. Without all of it, we wouldn't be here. So, you're saying the moral of our story is trust the mess?" Aubrielle laughed. "I'm saying some paths only make sense looking backward." He leaned across to kiss her, brief but tender. "And I wouldn't change a single step that led to you." "What legacy do you hope to leave behind? Is it your name, your wealth, your values, or the hearts you've touched along the way?" Share what matters most to you in the comments. If this journey from secrets to truth moved you, hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories about complicated love that defies boundaries. Let me know in the comments which part of their story resonated most with you. And remember, sometimes the most powerful connections begin in our most broken moments, when someone sees not just our wounds, but our worth.